welcome to the deep dive because today you are stepping into a very strange, highly entertaining collision of like high-level mathematics and pure internet chaos.
Yeah, it is quite the mix.
Right, because usually when we approach foundational concepts in probability or, scientific methodology, there's a certain aesthetic you expect.
For sure. You anticipate like a pristine classroom, a dry textbook, or a professor methodically writing out formulas on a whiteboard.
Exactly. The tone is inherently sterile.
Yeah.
Designed to convey the objective laws of the universe.
Mhm.
But our source material for today completely shatters that expectation.
Oh, absolutely. We are definitely not looking at a peer-reviewed journal to understand how evidence updates our beliefs.
No, we are not. We are examining a bizarre, incredibly cryptic YouTube music video. It's titled Bayesian Inference. Yeah. Full MV glitch edit.
What a title!
Right. And it was uploaded by a channel named Crimson Dragon. So our mission today is to actually extract a highly intuitive, functional understanding of probability by decoding this deeply disorienting piece of media.
Which is an ambitious goal, but the contrast is actually incredibly effective. I mean, the video introduces a formal, heavily academic math concept, but it delivers it through rapid-fire, glitchy repetition, unsettling art analysis, and corrupted audio captions.
It's intense.
It really is. It's a text that forces you to confront the very mechanics of how learning and perception work.
Yeah, which is a lot for a glitch edit. But the creator actually gives us a fairly straightforward starting point before all the chaos fully takes over.
Right, they ease you in a little bit.
Just a little. The video explicitly states that the function of this mathematical approach is to tackle problems found in scientific research in a probabilistic way.
Right.
And the core thesis they present is that probabilities are fundamentally subjective. But immediately, like right off the bat, the video's own auto captions provide a hilarious barrier to entry.
Oh my gosh, the captions, yes.
The system completely fails to transcribe the word Bayesian. Instead, it introduces the entire concept to the viewer as Bayesian Inference.
Bayesian Inference. It's just a phenomenal transcription error.
It's so good.
But underneath the whole Bayesian Inference joke lies the actual fulcrum of the entire philosophy. To understand why Crimson Dragon emphasizes the word subjective, we have to contrast it with the traditional way probability is taught.
Okay, lay it out for us.
Well, in traditional frequentist statistics, probability is treated as an objective physical property of the world.
Like flipping a coin.
Exactly. If you flip a standard coin, a frequentist says the probability of heads is 50%, because over an infinite number of physical flips, it'll land on heads half the time.
Makes sense.
Right. But it has absolutely nothing to do with what you, the observer, happen to know or believe about that coin. Bayesian inference completely rejects that premise.
Wait, really? It rejects the coin logic.
Yeah, it argues that probability is not a property of the coin at all. It's a measurement of your personal, subjective degree of belief based entirely on the information you currently possess.
Okay, let me test the limits of that, because the video offers this golden rule. It says, the more evidence you have for a thing, the higher the probability should be.
Which sounds like common sense on the surface.
Right. But if we're truly treating probability as a measure of subjective belief, rather than, objective reality, we need to look at the actual mechanism of how that belief changes.
Okay, let's hear it.
So, imagine it's your birthday. There's a wrapped present sitting on the table. You haven't touched it yet.
Okay, this is the perfect environment to map out the equation because you're starting with what Bayesian logic calls a prior probability.
Let's say you asked your family for a new smartphone. Before you even approach the table, you hold a subjective belief about what's inside that box.
Right, you're calculating the odds in your head.
Yeah, you might internally calculate, based on your parents' previous gift-giving habits, that there's a 20% chance it's the phone you asked for. That 20% is your prior.
Yep, that's your starting baseline.
But then you take physical action. You walk over and pick up the box.
Yeah.
And it is incredibly light.
Okay, so you've just introduced new data into the system. But the key to Bayesian updating isn't just that you gathered evidence, it's about how much weight that specific evidence carries. We call this the likelihood.
Wait, how do you measure the weight of the box being light, like mathematically?
Well, you ask yourself a conditional question. You say, if the box actually contains a smartphone, how likely is it to be this light?
I mean, very likely. Phones are light.
Exactly. Then you ask the inverse. If the box contains something else, say a heavy hardcover book or a cast iron skillet, how likely is it to be this light?
Basically zero.
Right, because the new evidence heavily aligns with the smartphone hypothesis and contradicts the alternatives, your subjective probability updates. That 20% prior shifts way upward.
But the process doesn't stop there, because you're holding the light box and your probability is rising, but then you shake it.
Oh, the shake test.
Right, and it makes a distinct, hollow rattling sound, like a bunch of loose plastic pieces hitting cardboard.
Oh,
Yeah, a brand new phone in pristine factory packaging does not rattle like a handful of loose parts.
and here we see the mathematical friction of the update. The new evidence, the rattle, has a very low likelihood of occurring if the smartphone hypothesis is actually true.
So the probability of the phone instantly plummets. And the probability that you were just gifted a box of loose Lego bricks skyrocket.
Exactly, and think about what just happened. You haven't opened the box.
Right.
The physical contents of the box have not changed at all. The objective reality of the universe is static, but your subjective probability has undergone these massive, violent swings purely based on the continuous integration of new sensory evidence.
That's fascinating.
It is, and this specific mechanism, your prior belief, plus the likelihood of the new evidence equals an updated posterior belief that is the exact reason modern scientific researchers rely on this methodology today.
Because it accounts for human bias.
Yeah, there's this persistent myth that scientists approach experiments as perfect blank slates, neutrally observing the universe. But that is practically impossible.
Right, they're human.
Exactly. A researcher always brings prior knowledge to an experiment. They've read previous literature, they have historical data, they have hypotheses.
So Bayesian inference gives them a way to handle that.
It provides a rigorous mathematical framework to take those subjective starting points and constrain them with hard data. It ensures that a researcher's beliefs are updated proportionally to the strength of the evidence they actually uncover.
Okay, that paints a remarkably elegant picture of the scientific method. You start with a belief, you gather evidence, and the math smoothly guides you closer to the truth.
Yeah, in theory, it's very clean.
But this is where I struggle to reconcile your clean explanation with Crimson Dragon's actual artistic choices in the video.
Yeah.
Because the video does not present this process as clean or elegant.
Oh, not at all.
No, it takes this sharp, highly dramatic turn into visual chaos,
Yeah.
specifically fixating on the Joker.
Right, the Joker. The transition from abstract math to that specific cultural icon is honestly the most revealing part of the source text.
Let's look at the creator's exact words from the transcript. They analyze the visual aesthetic by saying, the Joker's face is really beautiful, but like not in a good way. You know what I mean? It's like unintentionally, like in an intentional way.
Yeah, it's a very specific vibe they're describing.
But if Bayesian updating is simply the logical incorporation of new evidence, why use the ultimate symbol of anarchy?
Well, think about what the Joker represents.
Right. Madness, unpredictability, the total breakdown of order. Why describe this symbol as beautiful, but in a fundamentally unsettling way, just to illustrate a math equation?
So, to understand the Joker metaphor, we have to look at what evidence actually looks like before it ever enters that pristine mathematical equation.
What do you mean?
We're so used to seeing data after it's been cleaned up, right?
Right.
Formatted and placed neatly into a spreadsheet or a colorful bar chart. But raw data, the actual unvarnished reality of the universe that a researcher confronts in the field, is profoundly messy.
Right, it's not a bar chart in nature.
Exactly. If you're a medical researcher tracking a new virus or a sociologist studying human behavior, the incoming data is full of noise. It's riddled with confounding variables, reporting errors, unpredictable anomalies. Raw reality is chaotic. It is the Joker's face.
Okay, I get the chaos part, but I want to push back on the idea of the Joker being beautiful but not in a good way. If the raw data is just messy and chaotic, what makes it beautiful?
It's beautiful because it contains the hidden truth.
Right.
The chaotic data points are literally the only tangible threads we have to the actual mechanics of the universe.
Oh, wow. I see.
The truth is buried in there, but it's not in a good way, because confronting that raw chaos is totally overwhelming. It doesn't neatly confirm our biases, it frequently contradicts our prior beliefs, and forces us to confront how little we actually understand.
That clarifies the aesthetic a lot. But what about the creator's phrase, unintentionally, like in an intentional way? That feels like a total contradiction. Like, how can raw, chaotic data be both unintentional and intentional?
Think about a massive weather system. The movement of individual air molecules, sudden drops in pressure, seemingly random lightning strikes from our subjective viewpoint, standing in the rain, it looks entirely unintentional and chaotic.
Totally random.
Right. The storm is not purposefully organizing itself to be easily understayed by a meteorologist. However, every single chaotic movement is driven by strict underlying physical laws.
So the physics are the intention.
Exactly. The intention is the physics.
Yeah.
The unintentionality is the sheer, overwhelming complexity of how those physics play out in real time.
Okay, so the Bayesian equation is the tool we use to survive the cognitive dissonance of staring at the Joker.
That's a great way to put it.
The researcher is standing in the middle of this wildly complex, noisy hurricane of data. The evidence is baffling. But by rigorously applying the framework, weighing the prior against the likelihood of the new data, they force the underlying intention of the universe to slowly reveal itself out of the unintentional noise.
That is exactly the function of the methodology. The jarring cuts, the distorted audio, the flashing Joker imagery in the video. These are not just superficial, edgy editing choices.
They actually mean something.
Yes. Crimson Dragon is functionally simulating the disorientation of encountering raw, unstructured reality before the probability equations can process that chaos into an updated, structured belief.
Which means the visual chaos is actually setting the stage for the structural collapse of the video itself. Because the creator doesn't just show us chaotic images, they allow the communication medium of the video to actively disintegrate.
Yeah, the last third of the video is wild.
And the final third of the transcript, the linguistic structure just breaks down entirely.
The shift from visual metaphor to auditory and textual degradation is where the actual mechanics of human and machine learning are just laid completely bare.
The transcript shows the creator repeating a single phrase over and over.
Yeah.
This is the equation we were working with.
It just loops continuously.
Yeah. This is the equation we were working with. This is the equation we were working with. Then the phrase begins to splinter. It fractures into fragments like, this is what was the last, and this is what will last.
And then it falls apart completely.
Right. It completely collapses into this bizarre, auto-generated audio glitch loop. The captions just read, Asian friends, Asian friends, Asian friends.
The system's attempt to interpret the audio completely misfires.
And it is deeply fascinating because Asian friends is obviously the machine transcription algorithm desperately trying to process the phrase Bayesian inference.
Oh, clearly.
But let's look at why it failed through the lens of the math we just discussed. Because the machine algorithm is actually running its own internal Bayesian updates.
Right, the AI is using the exact same logic.
It receives raw, chaotic audio data, the glitchy, distorted sound for the video. That's the likelihood. But the algorithm also have a prior. It's been trained on millions of hours of everyday human conversation.
And in its training data.
Exactly. The phrase Asian friends appears vastly more often than the highly niche statistical term Bayesian inference.
That is such a brilliant application of the concept. The algorithm's strong prior belief just totally overwhelmed the ambiguous new evidence.
The machine heard the garbled audio, weighed it against its massive database of common phrases, and subjectively concluded that Asian friends was the most mathematically probable answer.
It's incredible to see it happen in real time.
It's a documented failure of a subjective update. The machine clung to its prior because the new evidence wasn't clear enough to force a paradigm shift.
And that failure highlights a really crucial vulnerability in the whole process. If your prior belief is too rigid, or if your ability to process the weight of new evidence is corrupted by noise, you will draw the wrong conclusion.
You'll hallucinate an answer.
You'll look at the data and see something that just isn't there. But the video doesn't just present the failure, it presents the solution. The frantic repetition of, this is the equation we were working with, is actually the key.
Really, I initially read that repetition as just a stylistic depiction of madness. You're saying the loop itself serves a structural purpose.
Oh, absolutely. It represents the most critical mechanic of Bayesian inference. We discussed the equation, right? Prior plus likelihood equals posterior.
Yeah.
But a researcher does not run that equation once and declare the truth of the universe solved. Bayesian updating is an infinite iterative process.
Oh, I see.
The moment you calculate your new, updated belief, your posterior, that belief does not remain static. It immediately becomes your new prior belief for the very next piece of evidence you encounter.
The output of the machine is instantly fed directly back into the input slot.
Precisely. You hold the light birthday present,
What?
your belief updates to a box of Legos. That is your new prior.
Right.
Then you shake it and it rattles. You update again. Then you notice the tape on the box is peeling. You update again, you apply the equation, your subjective probability shifts, and you immediately prepare to apply the equation to the next sensory input.
It never stops.
No, it doesn't. And Crimson Dragon explicitly vocalizes this algorithmic loop in the closing mantra of the video. Emerging right out of the glitchy chaos, the text just reads, "Round and round we go."
Round and round we go. Let me test the philosophical limits of that loop, though. Does round and round we go imply that there is no end state? Like
Yeah.
in Bayesian logic, is it ever possible to reach absolute 100% certainty about anything in the universe?
Mathematically speaking, no. Reaching absolute zero or absolute 100% probability literally breaks the equation.
Wait, really? It breaks the math?
Yes, because if you hold a prior belief with absolute 100% certainty, it means no amount of new evidence, no matter how heavy, no matter how undeniable, can ever shift your belief.
Wow.
Your likelihood calculation just becomes irrelevant. You become immune to learning. The loop stops entirely.
So the dizzying, repetitive loop is actually a feature, not a bug. Round and round we go isn't a statement of futility. It's the perpetual motion machine of human consciousness.
Exactly.
Every second of every day, our brains are taking in chaotic sensory data from a messy universe, weighing it against our past experiences, updating our subjective realities, and just feeding it back into the loop.
It is the defining characteristic of a rational mind navigating an irrational world. We are never finished learning. We are simply pausing between subjective updates.
That is amazing. So as you process everything we've unpacked in this deep dive, the core lesson from this seemingly unhinged Crimson Dragon video is surprisingly profound.
It really is.
Whether you are a high school student trying to navigate the complexities of social dynamics, or a scientific researcher staring at a spreadsheet full of confounding variables, you are going to be confronted with raw, ugly, Joker-faced chaos.
The universe is definitely not going to organize its data neatly for you.
It is not. But you do not have to be paralyzed by the noise. The math tells us that it is entirely acceptable to start with a subjective belief. You just have to acknowledge your starting point, measure the weight of the new evidence without bias, and allow your beliefs to be rigorously, continuously updated.
The willingness to let the evidence change your mind is the only way to find the underlying intention amidst the unintentional noise.
But of course, the video leaves us with one final, unresolved complication. Right after the round and round we go loop, the transcript ends on an incredibly cryptic, grammatically fractured string of text.
Oh yeah, the ending.
The final words are, "I love my ghost on my..."
It's an unfinished thought that just hangs in the digital ether.
It does. And analyzing that phrase through the lens of everything we just discussed leaves me with a very specific, somewhat unsettling thought for you to explore on your own.
Okay, let's hear it.
We know that all of our probabilities are subjective. We know that our entire understanding of reality is based on this continuous, sometimes glitchy loop of gathering evidence and updating our priors.
No.
But if the machine can mistake a complex truth for Asian friends, just because it prefers its own training data, what does that mean for us?
It's a scary thought.
Right. How much of our daily reality is just us loving our own ghosts? Are we routinely clinging to the comforting, phantom versions of our subjective beliefs, our own internal glitches and rigid priors, simply because we are too afraid to let the undeniable weight of new evidence force an update?
That's a huge question.
It is a question that requires its own continuous loop of evidence to answer. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive. Keep weighing the evidence, keep running the equation, and we will see you next time.